Hey there, YouTube, and welcome to Utility Sports. Today we'll be doing a lottery mock draft for the NBA draft here coming up November 18th. And this lottery mock does have a couple trays in it as well. So there will be a little bit to look forward to here. Moving into pick one, obviously we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, been on the clock for a while now after winning the lottery way back when. And I think it's pretty clear where they're going to go with the pick here. Obviously, it was kind of up for speculation, but they are scheduled to have their second meeting with LaMelo Ball. His trainer did end up following a lot of the Wolves brass, including GM Gershon Rosas on social media platforms. And I think LaMelo Ball will be the selection here for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, owner Glenn Taylor is looking to sell the team, and I think LaMelo Ball is a big pull in terms of value. To a potential owner. He's going to sell a lot of tickets, going to put fans in the stands, and that's something that the Minnesota Timberwolves badly need. One of the teams that kind of struggles to really pull attendance consistently, despite having a really good player in Karl-Anthony Towns, and also some upside with D'Angelo Russell moving forward. I think LaMelo Ball kind of has that it factor for a franchise, and he's got really good basketball potential too. For Basketball Matters, he's a really good playmaker, the best playmaker in the class, not even close in my opinion. He's got that natural feel for the game, really great size at 6'7", 6'10" wingspan, good length. Needs to improve as a shooter. I think we do have a video up on our channel, though, about LaMelo Ball, how he can improve his efficiency from behind the arc, especially based on the way he shoots shots and his shot selection. So if you guys want to check that out, that'll be a card right up here right now. But moving on to pick number 2 here with the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, some speculation whether or not they move that pick or not. They've been linked to players like Drew Holiday, Bradley Beal, and a few others that'll maybe help them win. But I think at 2, they're going to stick here because I don't think they're going to get quite the value that they're hoping for 2 in this class. Many seem to think it's a weak class. I think it's a pretty strong class in terms of depth, even though there's not necessarily that true star. I think that the depth in this class is very strong. A lot of starting level players that are going to be important for the league outlook for the next 5 to 10 years for sure. We're going to have players that are contributors on good teams, and a lot of players that will probably get paid pretty good mid-level contracts for a long time. But here at 2, I think the Warriors will stick James Wiseman, dominant center. Played 3 games for Memphis. In those 3 games, he was absolutely monstrous. Almost averaged 40 points per 40 minutes. There, obviously, only averages about 20 minutes per game because he's only playing about 20 minutes per game. But as academic ineligibility ruled Wiseman out for the remainder of the year, he ended up leaving Memphis all around and has been working out. So it's been over a year since we've actually seen him play a game by draft time. But he's got a lot of potential. He's 7'1", 7'6" wingspan, 9'6" standing reach. And he's an athletic monster going north and south, can really work in the pick and roll game, has some potential as a half-court scoring option a few years down the road. And I think that he kind of fits right into what the Warriors are going to want to do. We could look at them possibly going to Kongu here. He fits a little bit better in terms of the switching pick and roll defense. But Wiseman's going to be that rim protector that I think that they want to really lock down the paint for them. Now moving into 3, we did look at some possible Hornets trades moving up to 1, maybe flipping with the Warriors to go to 2. But we did have them decide to stick here, and this will actually be the first time we mock Anthony Edwards to the Charlotte Hornets. Obviously, Edwards is a NBA-ready scoring wing. He's got a really great frame, really good athleticism, NBA body at this point, 6'6", 225 pounds. The guy can jump out of the gym. I've got some questions about his work ethic and kind of his drive to really win. Struggled a little bit in Georgia. He compared himself to Dwayne Wade, which I don't really see at all. I think that in terms of play style, maybe yes, but based on what they had to do to win and their willingness to try and work to win, Edwards I don't think quite has that yet. But possibly in the NBA, maybe that's what he's been saving it for. And I think that he compares favorably to a guy like Andrew Wiggins, and I think Wiggins is a guy who could come in and score 20 points a game on a majority of NBA teams, and I think Edwards has that same potential here. So I think at 3, the Hornets are getting a player to help them out on the wings and a building block moving forward. Looking at pick 4 here, the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are an interesting case. Obviously, Kurt Karnisovas is their new GM. He's worked with the Denver Nuggets in the past under Tim Connolly as the assistant GM there, and now he kind of gets to run the show with Billy Donovan as his new head coach. And I think that they're going to take a guy who many see has a high floor. I think he'll fit right in with the Bulls roster, and that's Deni Avdija. He's a pretty gifted playmaker at his size, can handle the rock. Some say he might even be up to 6'10" now. Was listed at 6'8" earlier in the year though. So assuming he's between 6'8" and 6'10", he's a bigger wing. He's got good size, good strength to him. I think he's going to be a competitive defender at the NBA level, and I think that the ceiling's kind of up for him. He's pretty athletic, actually. Right-handed player, but he's shown abilities to dunk with his left hand, which I know that sounds a little silly, but that is kind of a rare thing even for some NBA athletes. And I think that Avdija would kind of come in right away for the Bulls and fit right in next to Levine and Kobe White and Markkanen and Wendell Carter, and kind of give them that possible ball handling option. I think he's got the potential to be a lead ball handler at some point in his career, which is pretty unique for a player of his size. So that's something to definitely watch in Chicago. Moving on to Cleveland here, we've mocked this a few times now on our channel, so you guys should check out the other videos too after this video is over. But we think they're going to stay in state. Obi Toppin will be the pick at 5 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's got really unique scoring potential at the NBA level. It kind of reminds me of Amari Stoudemire a little bit. He's an athletic freak. If you guys haven't watched him, I definitely recommend doing so. He jumps out of the gym. He puts on some Zion Williamson type highlight reels, dunks through the legs, windmills, tomahawks, 360 jams out in transition. And he's going to be a fun player to watch. I think he's going to bring a crowd to Cleveland. And his offensive potential is pretty high, honestly. He can work as a pick and roll screener. He can also fade out off the pick and roll. So he's going to be a little dynamic in that regard, has some face-up potential offensively, and I think he's got a little bit of Montrezl Harrell to him in that regard as well. Kind of how Amari Stoudemire looked in New York is what we could kind of be seeing with Obi Toppin in Cleveland. Now at pick 6, we do have our first trade here. You see we have the New Orleans Pelicans picking 6, and this is based off of something we had said a few weeks ago, actually, ahead of the Jrue Holiday rumors, and now it is rumored that the Hawks are in on Jrue Holiday, possibly surrounding around the 6th pick in the draft. Obviously, there could be a little bit more going out the door and something like that. But the Pelicans here pick up pick 6 for Jrue Holiday going to the Atlanta Hawks. And at 6, the Pelicans elect to go with point guard Tyrese Halliburton out of Iowa State. The nice thing about Halliburton is he's a bigger guard, 6'5", 6'6", with about a 6'11" wingspan, I believe. He's going to be able to function on the ball, off the ball, really good playmaker, can manipulate the pick and roll, can function off the ball as a shooter. So it gives them a little bit of leverage in the Lonzo Ball negotiations, makes him a little bit more expendable if he wants more than they're willing to pay him. But at the same time, if they do come to an agreement with Lonzo Ball, Halliburton could fit in right next to him, gives them some defensive upside. That's a pretty good defensive backcourt there with a lot of length between Halliburton and Ball. And I think that there's some shooting potential there for Halliburton. Shot very well at Iowa State in his 2 years, and I think that's something that'll translate to the NBA very well. Neither of them will really be, self-creators in the mid-range area or off the dribble a lot from 3, but I think the two of them as playmakers and defenders off of each other could be really, really dangerous as a backcourt. Moving into pick 7, the Detroit Pistons are on the clock here, and we are going to have them go with Patrick Williams. Williams is obviously a very athletic player. Let's see if I can find him here. There he is. Out of Florida State. He's got pretty good mobility. I see him kind of translating as a power forward in today's NBA with kind of what his size frame looks like and how fluid he is as a mover and his mobility. But I think defensively is kind of where his real potential lies. I think he can defend 2 through 4 in a lot of situations, mostly 3 through 4. Some shooting guards will be a little bit of a tough matchup based on quickness, in my opinion, and ability to change direction. But I think the upside is definitely there for Patrick Williams on that end of the floor. And I think he's going to bring some grit to Detroit, which is obviously good. Some of my concerns for Williams is he didn't start a game at Florida State. He did win all ACC 6-man of the year. So obviously was productive coming off the bench in that 6-man role. And, I question kind of the fit with Detroit offensively. I don't think he's, really going to be able to play the 2 or 3 offensively. I think he kind of fits more as a 4 in terms of a floor spacer and an opportunistic cutter. But there is some potential there for him to maybe grow in that area offensively. And I think Detroit would be an interesting situation for him because, they're obviously not looking to really win a lot right now. I think that their idea is set more for the future. And I think Patrick Williams kind of fits into that. And I think they'll be patient with him. He's got a little bit of Stanley Johnson to him, in my opinion. So I don't absolutely love him as a prospect. I believe I have him 14th or 15th on my big board. which we'll have a video coming out on that soon. So subscribe if you are new to the channel, and leave a like too. And let us know in the comments down below what you kind of think too about our channel. We're definitely open to a lot of comments and criticisms and ideas. So let us know. But that's kind of my thoughts on Patrick Williams. Moving into pick 8, the second half of the lottery here, the New York Knicks are on the clock, and there's still quite a bit of talent here at this point. And at this point, I'm going to mock Isaac Okoro to the New York Knicks. I think a big thing for new GM Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau, their new head coach, is building that culture, especially defensively. And I think the Knicks grabbing the best defensive player in the class in Isaac Okoro makes a lot of sense. He's going to be really versatile. He's got a little bit of Jimmy Butler to him. When Jimmy Butler came out of Marquette, he's a really, really gritty defender. He moves his feet extremely well. He's going to be able to switch on from 1 through 4 in the NBA, in my opinion, especially in a couple of years into his career when he gets a little bit stronger. But he moves really well out in space. He's going to be able to be a little bit of a Mr. 94 feet, take guys full court, and also, play off the ball, be a disruptor. He's really, really athletic. This guy jumps out of the gym defensively. And he's got a lot of slashing potential. He shot over 60% inside the arc in his freshman season at Auburn. Obviously, outside the arc is a little bit of more of a question mark. That's kind of his swing skill at the NBA level. Only shot 29% from 3 there. He's going to have to really pick that up to be a viable offensive player. But at this point, that's why we have him going pick 8, because of his defensive upside and slashing potential. And, if all things come around for him as a shooter, and I think he has the work ethic to really improve, that maybe he becomes one of these guys that is a high-level starter at some point in the NBA. And I think that the Knicks would be ecstatic to get him at 8 to build up that culture. Looking at pick 9, the Washington Wizards are on the clock, and we've mocked this so many times at this point. It almost feels like it's going to happen for sure, and that's Onyeka Okongwu out of USC. The dynamic big man, I believe he's 6'9", 6'10", with really good lateral mobility for a big. Moves out in space really, really well, and I think he fits right into that roster. They're going to be able to keep Bertans this year, and they're also getting John Wall back healthy, and Bradley Beal's a certified all-star level player. And I think adding Okongwu to kind of anchor that defense, be able to switch out in space, and then in a big improvement over Thomas Bryant, not only gives them some more front court depth with Bryant moving to the bench, but Okongwu vastly improves their defensive presence, especially when you're getting John Wall back, a guy who's been in the all-defense conversation before at the guard position. I think that's kind of where the Wizards need to go, because offensively last year they were really dynamite for a majority of the year. And I think that getting stronger defensively, getting a guy who can screen and roll, move out in space, he's going to be able to grow as a passer, in my opinion, has some face-up potential a few years into his career. I think that this is a really solid pickup for the Wizards at 9. Looking at the Phoenix Suns at 10 now, jumping into them, I'm going to mock them Devin Vassell, actually, another Florida State product. And my reasoning for doing so is the rumors that emerged late last night about Chris Paul possibly being a trade candidate for the Phoenix Suns to acquire. The Thunder and Suns are in on talks on him, and I think Vassell would fit right in then next to Chris Paul and Devin Booker as a small forward option, assuming Kelly Oubre would be going out the door back to Oklahoma City in a trade like that. And I think Vassell would make a lot of sense. He's got some shot creating potential. I really, really like Vassell, actually. I have him as the 3rd best player on my big board. He's got a really good shooting stroke, as long as he doesn't actually stick with the video that emerged recently. But based off what we saw on film from Florida State, he's a dynamic shooter off the dribble, can go left and right, pull up both ways. Good hang dribble, really athletic, defensive potential is really high. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Paul George, honestly, when Paul George was coming out. And Paul George was the 10th pick in his class as well, actually. So funny enough, Vassell goes 10th here in this mock. And I really like this for the Suns. I think acquiring Chris Paul and adding Vassell around Devin Booker while keeping DeAndre Ayton would really, be a good look for them. And I think that they'd be a playoff team if they pulled those 2 moves off here with acquiring Vassell and also trading for Chris Paul. Now at pick 11 here with the San Antonio Spurs, I think the biggest thing for them is they need some size and shooting. And that size and shooting is going to come in the player Aaron Nesmith out of Vanderbilt. Played under head coach Jerry Stackhouse this year. As a sophomore, kind of really emerged in his 14 games, shooting over 8 threes a game and shot over 52%. So on about 120 attempts or so, he made about, I believe, 58 of them or so, which is really, really which really shows how great he was at shooting this year, playing next to Scottie Pippen Jr. for Vanderbilt. And I think that he kind of gives them that floor spacing they need next to LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, who I think will both be around for next season yet. I think Nesmith's got some good potential as a scorer. He can shoot off the hang dribble, good high release point. He's going to be able to shoot off the catch, shoot off the move. And he's also got some potential to shoot off the bounce as his career kind of progresses. And I think that this is a very solid pick for the Spurs, not only for the short time based off their two key players at this moment, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, but I think long-term he fits well next to DeJounte Murray, Derek White, and Lonnie Walker as well. And I think that this is a good, solid pick for them for both the short-term and long-term. Jumping into pick 12 here, we have the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings are kind of an interesting team. Obviously, it depends on kind of what happens with Buddy Hield. We could see him possibly going out the door. I think a team like Indiana would be interested in maybe acquiring him. And I think possibly Victor Oladipo could be on his way to the Sacramento Kings. But at this point, we have the Kings staying here at 12. Also, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Bogdan Bogdanovic and Harrison Barnes. We've heard some rumors about the Milwaukee Bucks. But at this point, I think that Killian Hayes is a safe mock for them. They might be taking him based off the upside. They might be able to, they might like his shot creating potential next to De'Aaron Fox, a very north-south point guard with really good speed and transition. I think Killian Hayes gives them some of that shot creating and true playmaking potential where the two of them could form a really dangerous backcourt at some point. I personally don't love Killian Hayes as a prospect. I think that he's a good player, possibly, but I think is kind of really dependent on his shooting coming around. Shot only about 29% for his career overseas. And I think that for him to really kind of utilize his shot creating potential and space creating ability, he's got to become a more consistent shooter. And I think as a playmaker, he's good, but I don't think he's great or elite in that area. And I think he kind of translates more of an Emmanuel Mudiay, if I'm being honest. But I hope nothing but the best for him. And I think the Kings maybe would be a good fit for him, especially with their question marks in the backcourt with Hield and Bogdanovic moving forward. And I think De'Aaron Fox gives them enough stability in the backcourt that maybe they'd be able to afford taking a high-risk, high-reward prospect like Killian Hayes here at pick 12. Now we have the New Orleans Pelicans on the clock again. At pick 6, we did have them take Tyrese Halliburton. And at this point, I think that they're kind of understanding that they need to, get more shooting, more floor spacing around Zion Williamson and Lonzo Ball, and also Brandon Ingram. And I think that their way of doing so is going with Saddiq Bey out of Villanova. Bey's got pretty good size at 6'8", really good wingspan. He's got some 3-and-D potential, shot really well in his career at Villanova. And I think he's a guy who comes in, fits right in, gives them rotational wing minutes behind Brandon Ingram early in his career, and some much-needed depth at the wing position because obviously players like Josh Hart, J.J. Redick, you don't really know what their long-term staying power is in New Orleans. Redick, obviously, because he's older. Josh Hart, because he's a middling player and not really a guy that maybe the Pelicans will feel like paying when he comes up to that. Obviously, the Kenrich Williams minutes needs to go out the door. And already having addressed guard with Tyrese Halliburton, I think that makes all the sense in the world in a lot of ways. And I think Saddiq Bey kind of comes in. He can play that 3-4 position with Brandon Ingram. And like I said, the shooting around Zion is really going to be of utmost importance to them. Now, looking at the last pick of the lottery here, we have the Boston Celtics on the clock. And the Celtics are one of those teams that the rich are going to get richer here in this case. They got a very good starting lineup already, obviously with Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart coming off the bench, Daniel Tice. Many think that they could improve at the center position, and possibly I think they would be a team to watch up, maybe trading up for Onyeka Okongwu if he were to fall to 9 like he did in this mock. But at the same time, I think they're pretty content sitting at 14 with the idea that they are going to get Tyrell Terry out of Stanford. And Terry, if you guys haven't watched him, this guy's going to come into the league as an elite shooter, can shoot off the catch, can shoot off the bounce, can shoot off the move, running around, picks, screens, moves really, really well without the ball, very fluid player. He's got some skill set to manipulate the pick and roll. And I think coming off the bench, him and Marcus Smart early in their career would kind of complement each other really well. Smart is more of that playmaker and defender type, and Tyrell Terry is that scoring shooting type. Next to Smart, I think Smart's defensive prowess could kind of help Tyrell Terry's limitations early in his career. And I think that Tyrell Terry's got real staying power as a starting guard in this league, actually. I think that he's a player that a lot of teams should be trying to get their hands on here. I think that as a Mavericks fan, I would hope for the Mavericks to try and get Tyrell Terry via trade up. But at this point, I think that the Celtics are most likely to acquire him. And at pick 14 to round out the lottery, I think that's a really great pick. Looking back at this mock here through the first 14 picks, we had LaMelo Ball go 1 to the Wolves, Wiseman 2 to the Warriors, Edwards 3 to the Hornets, Avdija 4, what will be top and 5 to the Cavs, Halliburton and Saddiq Bey both go to the Pelicans at 6 and 13. Patrick Williams goes 7 to the Pistons. Okoro 8 to the Knicks, Okongwu 9 to the Wizards, Vassell 10, Nesmith 11 to the Spurs, Hayes 12 to the Kings. We already talked about Saddiq Bey, and Tyrell Terry 14 to the Boston Celtics. To me, the biggest winner in this situation would probably be either the Washington Wizards or the New York Knicks, based on where their draft selection is. I think that Okoro is a really important player for kind of setting a tone and establishing a culture. I think he's a young player that's going to want to come in and win. I think he's a really motivated player. He's got a lot of good potential, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And I think that's a home run pick for a Tom Thibodeau-led team. And I think Okongwu fits perfectly into what the Wizards have, not only based off of fit, but based off of talent too. I think he's one of the top 7 or 8 players in this class, and getting him at 9 is a little bit of good value here. And in my opinion, I think Patrick Williams at 7 is kind of the lost pick here. And I think that's a very likely selection, though, for the Detroit Pistons. I understand some of the ideas around his upside. I also don't love the Killian Hayes pick. Like I said, I'm not very high on him. I believe I've set him 17th on my big board. Now, he's definitely got the potential, and the upside's there. But it's 50-50 at this point whether or not that shooting kind of translates at all, and if he's got to make the strides there. And at this point, he hasn't shown a lot of that, but maybe he's grown in the last 2 months, 3 months as a shooter as well. And perhaps they could be getting a home run pick there at 12. Let us know down in the comments below what you think about the mock, who you want your team to select, who your favorite team is, and who your favorite players are in this class. Thank you guys for commenting, and we'll see you in the next video.